Introduction: The Rise of the Gig Economy and Its Place in History. Welcome to a deep dive into one of the most transformative shifts in modern work, the gig economy. Picture this. It's 2026, and your neighbor drives for Uber on weekends. Your friend delivers meals via DoorDash after her day job, and your cousin earns a living freelancing on Fiverr. Across the globe, millions have swapped traditional 9-to-5 jobs for gigs, short-term, flexible tasks facilitated by digital platforms. The promise is seductive. Work when you want, where you want, free from the shackles of a rigid schedule or overbearing boss. It's a vision of independence that feels distinctly modern, fueled by technology and the allure of personal choice. But let's step back. The gig economy didn't emerge in a vacuum. It's part of a longer story about how work evolves under capitalism. In the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution pulled people from farms into factories, turning artisans into wage laborers. Today, the digital revolution is reshaping labor again, moving us from offices to apps. The gig economy, with its sleek interfaces and instant payouts, feels like progress, a break from the past. Yet, beneath its shiny surface, there's a question that lingers. Is this freedom, or is it something else entirely? Enter Karl Marx, a philosopher whose ideas about capitalism still resonate over 150 years later. Marx saw work under capitalism as a site of exploitation, where the powerful profit by extracting value from the powerless. He warned of a system that alienates workers from their labor, their potential, and each other, all to fuel wealth for the few. As gig platforms like Uber and Upwork rake in billions while their workers scrape by, Marx's critique feels eerily prescient. Is the gig economy a new frontier of opportunity, or is it old exploitation dressed up in digital clothes? What would Marx make of this world where algorithms dictate wages and freedom comes with a catch? In this video, we're going to unpack the gig economy through Marx's eyes. We'll explore its mechanics, its human impact, and its contradictions. We'll hear from gig workers, dig into data, wrestle with counter-arguments, and ponder what the future holds. This isn't just about economics. It's about society, power, and the meaning of work itself. So, grab a coffee, settle in, and let's journey into the gig economy's promises and perils. Section 1. Understanding the gig economy. A new way to work? To start, let's define the gig economy. At its core, it's a labor market built on short-term, task-based jobs, gigs. Think of a driver picking up passengers through Lyft, a writer crafting blog posts on Upwork, or a handyman fixing sinks via TaskRabbit. Digital platforms connect workers to customers, often with a tap on a screen. Unlike traditional employment, gig workers aren't employees. They're independent contractors. No steady paycheck, no benefits like health insurance or paid vacation, no job security. They supply their own tools, cars, laptops, bikes, and bear the risks of fluctuating demand. This model has exploded in recent years. The International Labor Organization estimates that globally, over 160 million people participate in platform-based work, with the U.S. alone hosting more than 50 million gig workers by 2022. For some, it's a side hustle, a way to earn extra cash. For others, it's their lifeline. A 2021 Pew Research study found that 16% of Americans have done gig work, with many relying on it as their primary income. The appeal is clear: flexibility. You can log in when it suits you, log off when you're done. No cubicle, no dress code, no clock-watching supervisor. But flexibility isn't the full story. Let's meet Elena, a 29-year-old Uber driver in Chicago. She started driving to supplement her income as a part-time teacher. "I like the idea of choosing my hours," she says. "But now I'm driving 50 hours a week just to pay bills. Gas prices are up, the app takes a big cut, and if I don't work enough, I can't make rent." Elena's not alone. A 2020 study by the Economic Policy Institute found that after expenses, Uber drivers in major cities averaged $9 to $121 per hour, below the federal minimum wage of $7.25, let alone a living wage. Meanwhile, the platforms thrive. Uber's market value hit $70 billion in 2021, even after years of reported losses. DoorDash's revenue soared to $6.6 billion in 2022. These companies don't own fleets of cars or employ armies of workers. They profit by taking a slice of every gig, often 20–30% per transaction. The wealth flows upward to executives and investors, while workers like Elena shoulder the costs and risks. Historically, this isn't entirely new. In the 18th and 19th centuries, piecework systems paid workers per task, sewing a shirt, weaving a rug, rather than by the hour. Marx studied these systems, noting how they shifted risk onto laborers while maximizing profit for owners. The gig economy feels like a high-tech echo of that past, with apps replacing middlemen. But the scale and speed are unprecedented, driven by smartphones and global connectivity. Is this innovation a step forward or a regression in disguise? Marx's lens might help us see. Section 2. Marx's Critique of Capitalism. A crash course. To understand what Marx would say about the gig economy, we need to unpack his ideas. Born in 1818 in Germany, Karl Marx was a philosopher, economist, and revolutionary who spent his life dissecting capitalism. He wasn't just a critic. He was a detective, piecing together how the system worked and why it hurt so many. His magnum opus, Das Kapital, laid out a framework that's still debated today. At the heart of Marx's critique is surplus value. Imagine a shoemaker crafting a pair of boots worth $100. She's paid $40 for her labor, and the factory owner keeps the remaining $60 as profit. That $60 is surplus value, the extra worth created by the worker but claimed by the capitalist. For Marx, this isn't an accident. It's the engine of capitalism. The owning class, the bourgeoisie, controls the means of production, factories, land, now platforms, while the working class, the proletariat, has only their labor to sell. The gap between what workers produce and what they're paid drives inequality. But Marx went beyond economics. He saw capitalism as deeply dehumanizing, creating what he called alienation. He identified 4 types. Alienation from the product. Workers don't own what they make. A factory worker assembles a car but never drives it. A gig driver delivers food but can't afford it. Alienation from the process. Workers have no say in how they work. They're cogs in a machine, or today, pawns in an algorithm. Alienation from their potential. Repetitive tasks stifle creativity. A seamstress might dream of designing gowns but instead stitches seams all day. Alienation from others. Capitalism pits workers against each other, fostering competition over camaraderie. Take a historical example. In 1840s Manchester, England, textile workers toiled 14-hour days in grim factories. They spun cotton into cloth they'd never wear, under conditions they couldn't control, for wages that barely fed their families. Marx visited these mills, documenting the exhaustion and despair. He argued that this alienation wasn't just a byproduct, it was the point. Capitalism thrives by reducing labor to a commodity, stripping it of meaning. Marx also had a vision for change. He believed capitalism's flaws, its booms and busts, its growing wealth gaps, would push workers to revolt. United, they'd seize the means of production and build a classless society where labor served human needs, not profit. The Russian Revolution of 1917 drew on these ideas, though the results diverged from Marx's hopes. Still, his diagnosis of capitalism's tensions remains a tool for understanding systems like the gig economy. Section 3. The Gig Economy as Modern Exploitation. Stories and Stats. Now, let's apply Marx's framework to the gig economy. Does it exploit workers in the way he described? Let's start with surplus value. Take Raj, a DoorDash delivery worker in Los Angeles. He completes a delivery that earns the company $20, $10 from the customer, $10 in fees. DoorDash pays Raj $6 but keeps $14 after accounting for its cut and operational costs. Raj covers gas, bike repairs, and phone data himself, netting maybe $4 per delivery after expenses. Across dozens of deliveries, Raj generates hundreds in revenue, but most of it flows to DoorDash, valued at over $25 billion in 2023. Marx would call this surplus value extraction. Raj's labor creates wealth, but the platform claims the lion's share. Now, alienation. Consider Lisa, a Lyft driver in Atlanta. Alienation from the product. She provides rides, but they're branded as Lyft's service. Her name's barely a footnote. Alienation from the process. The app assigns fares, sets prices, tracks her every move. She can't negotiate rates or refuse low-paying jobs without risking deactivation. Alienation from her potential. Lisa once dreamed of opening a bakery. Now, driving 60 hours a week leaves no time for passion projects. Alienation from others. She rarely meets fellow drivers. The app pits them against each other. Faster pickups, higher ratings, more gigs. Lisa's story reflects broader trends. A 2019 Freelancers Union survey found that 53% of gig workers struggle financially, with 70% feeling insecure. A 2022 UC Berkeley study revealed that 40% of gig workers in California earn below the state minimum wage after expenses. Meanwhile, platform profits soar. Uber reported $31.8 billion in revenue in 2022 alone. Let's zoom out to history. In the 1880s, dock workers in London were paid per load, not per hour, much like gig workers today. They waited for jobs, competed fiercely, and lived in poverty while shipping companies grew rich. Marx wrote about them, calling it casual labor, unstable work that enriched employers at workers' expense. The gig economy scales this model globally, with algorithms replacing foremen. The dock worker racing for a load is now the driver racing for a fare, but the dynamic persists. More examples deepen the picture. Meet Carlos, a TaskRabbit handyman in Miami. He fixes leaky faucets and assembles furniture, charging $30 per job. TaskRabbit takes 15%, leaving him $25.50. After tools and transport, he nets $20. A good week might bring $600, but a slow one drops him to $200, unpredictable and unsustainable. Or take Priya, an Upwork writer in Bangalore, India. She earns $5 per article, competing with thousands globally. Upwork's 20% fee cuts her pay to $4, and she writes 10 pieces a day to survive. Her skills are undervalued, her labor commodified. Statistics reinforce these stories. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that gig workers are twice as likely as traditional employees to lack health insurance. A 2021 Oxfam study found that gig platforms in the Global South often pay below local living wages, perpetuating poverty. Marx would see a clear pattern. The gig economy extracts value and alienates workers, echoing capitalism's oldest tricks. Section 4. The Illusion of Freedom. Flexibility's Hidden Chains. The gig economy sells itself on freedom. Be your own boss, Uber's ads proclaim. Set your schedule, says Fiverr. But how free are gig workers, really? Take Jamal, a 34-year-old Instacart shopper in Seattle. He picks his shifts, but the reality is relentless. If I don't work peak hours, I don't earn enough, he says. The app pushes me to take every order, or my priority drops. A 2021 gig worker survey found that 58% of gig workers log over 40 hours weekly, with 20% exceeding 60 hours, more than many full-time jobs. Flexibility exists, but survival demands constant hustle. Marx would call this a false freedom. Workers may choose when to work, but not how or under what conditions. Platforms wield control. Algorithms set pay, monitor performance, enforce rules. Refuse a low-paying gig? Your rating dips. Complain online? Risk deactivation. A 2020 Wired investigation found that Uber penalizes drivers who decline too many rides, subtly coercing compliance. This isn't autonomy, it's conditional liberty. Historically, this mirrors the putting out system of the 1700s. Cottage workers spun wool at home, paid per piece by merchants. They chose their hours but were tethered to market whims and low rates. Marx saw this as proto-capitalism, where apparent independence masked exploitation. Today's gig worker, tethered to an app instead of a merchant, faces a similar bind. Data backs this up. A 2018 MIT study showed that 74% of Uber drivers earned less than their state's minimum wage after expenses, despite working freely. The freedom to log in any time doesn't offset the need to log in all the time to make ends meet. Marx might argue that true freedom requires power over wages, conditions, outcomes, not just a flexible clock. Consider Anna, a bike courier for Deliveroo in London. She loves cycling and the ability to work outdoors, but the app tracks her speed, penalizes late deliveries, and adjusts pay dynamically. A rainy day slashes orders, leaving her broke. I'm my own boss until the algorithm decides otherwise, she quips. Marx would see this as digital domination, where technology amplifies control, not liberation. Section 5. Technology and the Gig Economy. Tool or Tyrant. Marx critiqued a world of steam engines and looms, but today's gig economy runs on code and cloud servers. How does technology shape this landscape? On one side, it intensifies exploitation. Algorithms are relentless optimizers, cutting labor costs to boost margins. Uber's dynamic pricing can lower fares when demand dips, shrinking driver pay instantly. A 2022 Bloomberg report revealed that DoorDash quietly increased its commission rates, squeezing workers further. Technology hides the human toll. Executives don't see weary drivers. They see dashboards of profit. Yet, technology also holds promise. Marx dreamed of workers owning the means of production. Could gig workers build their own platforms? Platform cooperatives are testing this idea. Take Up and Go, a cleaner-owned app in Chicago. Workers set rates, share profits, and vote on policies. Launched in 2019, it's small but growing, serving 200 clients monthly by 2023. Or consider Fairmondo, a German marketplace where sellers co-own the platform, splitting revenue equitably. History offers parallels. In the 1890s, U.S. farmers formed cooperatives to bypass exploitative railroads, pooling resources to ship goods fairly. Marx praised such efforts as resistance to capital's grip. Today's gig co-ops face steeper odds. Uber's $70 billion valuation dwarfs their budgets, but they echo his vision. Still, tech's dual nature complicates things. Blockchain could enable decentralized gig apps, letting workers deal directly with clients, no platform skimming fees. A 2022 pilot in Austin tested this, connecting tutors to students via a blockchain ledger. It's early, but promising. Yet big platforms fight back. In 2020, Uber, Lyft, and others spent $200 million on California's Proposition 22, cementing their contractor model against employee rights. Technology empowers, but only if workers control it. Otherwise, it's a sharper tool for exploitation. Section 6. Counter-arguments. Does the gig economy have a defense? Not everyone agrees with Marx's grim view. Defenders say the gig economy opens doors. For immigrants like Hassan, a Syrian refugee driving for Lyft in Dallas, it's a job when traditional employers won't hire. For caregivers like May, freelancing on care.com in Toronto, it fits around family duties. A 2021 World Bank report noted that gig work employs millions in the global south, where formal jobs are scarce. High-skilled gig workers also thrive. Take Zoe, a graphic designer on 99 Designs. She earns $50 an hour, picks premium clients, and builds a portfolio, all without a boss. For her, the gig economy is empowering, not alienating. A 2020 McKinsey study found that 20% of gig workers globally earn above-average incomes, often in creative or tech fields. Economists praise efficiency. Platforms match workers to tasks instantly. Uber riders don't wait. Fiverr clients get logos fast. This cuts unemployment and boosts convenience. A 2019 NBER paper argued that gig work reduces labor market friction, especially in rural areas where jobs are thin. But Marx would push back. These benefits skew toward the privileged. Zoe's success relies on skills and bargaining power most gig workers lack. Drivers and couriers can't charge $50 an hour. Efficiency often means lower pay. A 2019 J.P. Morgan study showed Uber driver earnings fell 53% from 2013 to 2017 as supply outpaced demand. Convenience for consumers doesn't justify insecurity for workers. Consider gig work's dark side. In India, Ola drivers protested in 2021 over falling rates and high commissions, some burning leases in despair. In the UK, Deliveroo riders struck in 2022, citing poverty wages. The system works for some, but for many, it's a treadmill. Flexible, yes, but grueling. Section 7. Marx Today. Resistance and Rebellion. If Marx watched this unfold, he'd likely nod knowingly. The gig economy fits his script. Platforms as the new bourgeoisie, workers as the digital proletariat. Exploitation persists, surplus value extracted via app fees, alienation baked into the model. But he'd also look for resistance. It's emerging. In 2019, Uber drivers in Los Angeles staged a strike, demanding fair pay. In 2020, UK Deliveroo workers won union recognition after protests. California's AB5 law briefly classified gig workers as employees, though Proposition 22 rolled it back. Globally, groups like Gig Workers Rising and India's All India Gig Workers Union are organizing, sharing tactics online. Marx saw resistance as inevitable. Capitalism's excesses spark pushback. In 1889, London dock workers struck for better pay, inspiring global labor movements. Today's gig strikes echo that spirit, but challenges abound. Workers are scattered, not gathered in factories. Apps punish dissent. Some drivers report deactivation after protests. A 2021 Vice expose found Uber used AI to flag troublemakers. Yet, solidarity grows. Reddit forums like Our Uber Drivers buzz with tips and outrage. WhatsApp groups in Kenya connect riders for mutual aid. Marx might see these as flickers of class consciousness, fragile but real. He'd urge workers to unite beyond platforms, perhaps seizing tech itself. Imagine a worker-owned Uber, profits shared, not hoarded. Section 8. The Global Gig Economy. Exploitation without borders. The gig economy isn't just Western. In Nairobi, Kenya, Jumia delivery riders earn $2 per shift. Biking through traffic sans benefits. In Manila, Philippines, Grab drivers work 14-hour days, netting $5 after fuel. A 2022 Fair Work study rated 120 platforms across 27 countries. 80% scored below 5/10 on fair pay and conditions. Colonial echoes linger. In the 19th century, British firms extracted rubber from India, paying workers pennies. Today, Western platforms profit from cheap labor in the global South, outsourcing risk. Marx called this imperialism's economic arm, capital crossing borders to exploit. A 2021 Oxfam report found Amazon's Mechanical Turk pays African workers under $2 hourly, far below U.S. rates. Resistance crosses borders too. In 2022, South African Uber drivers struck alongside U.S. peers, demanding global standards. Marx might see a chance here. A transnational proletariat, linked by tech, challenging a transnational bourgeoisie. Section 9. Rethinking Work. Solutions and Dreams. Can the gig economy be fixed? Regulation offers one path. Spain's 2021 Riders' Law made delivery workers employees, granting benefits. The EU's 2022 Platform Work Directive aims to curb misclassification. In the U.S., cities like Seattle set gig minimum wages, $15 per hour by 2023. Co-ops are another fix. The Drivers Cooperative in New York, launched in 2021, has 10,000 drivers and lower fees than Uber. In Barcelona, Mensakas, a rider-owned app, serves 500 clients weekly. Scaling's tough. Venture capital favors giants, but they're proof of concept. Tech could disrupt too. Decentralized apps on blockchain like Austin's Tutor pilot cut middlemen. Imagine drivers setting fares, riders keeping 100%, Marx's worker control digitized. Yet, adoption's slow, and platforms resist fiercely. History inspires. The 1930s U.S. New Deal tamed capitalism with labor laws. The 1970s Swedish codetermination gave workers boardroom seats. Today, we could blend regulation, co-ops, and tech for a fairer gig economy. Conclusion. What's next for work? The gig economy is a mirror, reflecting our values, our tech, our choices. Marx's critique strips it bare. Flexibility masks exploitation. Innovation concentrates power. But he also saw hope. Workers, awakened, can rewrite the script. Where do we go? Accept precarity as the future? Or fight for work that's dignified, shared, human? Marx's question hangs over us. Who controls the tools, the platforms, the algorithms? And his challenge remains. Build a world where labor lifts all, not just the top. So, viewer, what's your move? Share a thought, join a cause, or just ponder? Because the gig economy story isn't finished. It's ours to shape.